Hi, I'm your host, Adam L. And today, my guest is Vera Courtenay. She is the author of the book, The Age If I Know, Unmasking the Magicians, All Religions Exposed. As well, Vera is a mother, wife, astrologer, and Reiki master teacher. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Adam. Thank you for having me.
It's amazing that I finally get to speak to you. Um, Even though we don't really know each other that well, you've been very important in my life. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Um, and, I'll just let you say anything to start this out that you want to say. I've got many questions I want to ask you, but
Okay.
if there's anything on your heart to share.
Sure, sure. I was thinking when you were saying my name and the things that I am, as I was writing that, I was like, wow, it's just amazing how our lives evolve where we can keep adding to our bio and who we are. And I realized that, in the Bible, the God of the Bible says, I am that I am, right? So everybody knows that as I am. I see that from the vantage point of astrology, where the sign of Aries says I am. And what they're doing is coming into this realm to actualize who they are, their identity. And so I happen to be an Aries sun and I have lots of energy in the sign of Aries. And it's amazing that at this point in my life, how that phrase I am has become meant so much more to me. And I realize that there's more that I'm coming into and who I'm coming into. And I say that to say that there's so much potential to the human possibility. There's so
Mhm.
much that humans are capable of. And if we only tapped into our purpose, sometimes we don't know what our purpose is, but the universe pushes us there
Mhm.
unknowingly, as it's happened to me and as I'm sure it's happened to you. And so once we begin to vibrate in the frequency of that calling or that urge, I call it an urge and a feeling that just pulls you and you don't know what's going on. You
Mhm.
just are like, you're without a rudder. You're just going with it, right?
Mhm.
And and that is when you begin to add to your bio in the way that has meaning to you.
Mhm.
All of those commas mean something to me because it's not something that I just became accredited with in school. I'm not college educated, but life gave me the degrees. And
Okay.
so they so much more because I know exactly what each of those titles mean and why they represent what they represent because I've been through the process. So yeah, so that I just thought of that when you were speaking that as like so crazy how life happens.
So you've never been to college?
No, never been to college.
Wow, you're
I
very well spoken for to college. Very well
Yeah,
spoken.
my mother is Puerto Rican, and I say that to say everything I say there's like a reason. So my mother grew up in Spanish Harlem, and when she went to school, the school that she happened to be in, she was the only minority, and and they didn't really teach her. In fact, they kind of sat her in the back of the class and let her just do artwork. And so she's an incredible artist. I mean, my artwork is representative of my mother's skill. So
Mm,
she developed her art as everyone else learned the academia. And she stopped school when she was in the eighth grade, but she was so intelligent, Adam. Like,
mm.
oh my goodness, this woman, if she had lived out the academic um, possibilities for herself, she could have been everything. She could have kept adding commas to who she is. How incredible she is. And then my dad too, no college education. He's a Marine, a veteran.
Okay.
um, Somehow my family, I think life takes us through university, even an academic one, that again, we don't elicit, it just arrives. And we're like, hey, I'm interested in that. And so
Hmm.
you just begin to delve into it because it becomes a craving. And I think there's a lot of people like that did not have possibilities to get degrees and higher academics, but if they were to exert their efforts into something that they're pulled into wanting to understand,
Hmm.
they'll be able to master it, you know? And so I'm nothing special. I just have interest. And when I do, I have a ravenous appetite to understand it, you
Yes,
know?
I get that from you, definitely.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll ask you about the book because well, first I wanted to ask you just out of curiosity, Reiki,
Yeah.
when did you get into that?
Yeah. In 2017, before that, I was interested in it and I went to a couple of Reiki things. But in 2017, I had gone to the emergency room because I was having my stomach was hurting. And I'm like,
Hmm.
and it was hurting where nothing was helping. So I was like, I don't know, this feels weird. So please let me go to the emergency. My husband takes me there, and I'm sitting there after all the exams for an hour, and they're thinking it would be kidney stones. And when they came into the room, the doctor looked worried, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, you have cancer, you have kidney cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Sitting there and I'm so calm, Adam. Like I always thought you hear that, you're just gonna go. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, really? Like, I don't feel like I do. In my mind, I'm thinking, I'm like, that's so weird. I'm like, my parents are healthy, they're in their 80s, my siblings, there are 10 of us, everybody's healthy.
Hmm.
Okay. So I said to the doctor, what do I do next? So he basically told me what to do, go see a urologist, da, da, da. So for an entire year, I had to see different doctors. I had to get blood tests before they could perform surgery. And it seemed like every time I was scheduled to have surgery, the universe would block the surgery. And
Okay.
so the universe would block the surgery. Something would happen where the doctor couldn't perform it then, or I couldn't perform it then. Then they did my blood work and said something was wrong with my blood. Then they did an EKG and said something's wrong with my heart. And I'm like, huh? Where is this coming from? And
Oh
so
my.
because it slowed down the possibility of surgery because they're not going to perform surgery if they think you could have a heart attack. So because of that, I had to wait for appointments to see cardiologists and then a blood specialist. And that took me from January all the way into like August. So October comes, my urologist calls and says, okay, we have to get this surgery done. You can't wait
Hmm.
anymore. And so the surgery, we scheduled the surgery for December. November comes, the doctor says, do another scan. Let's see what it looks like. I do another scan. 2 weeks, I don't hear from the doctor. And I'm like, what's going on? So he calls me at night. My phone rings. I see it's him. And I'm like, oh, geez. So he calls and he's like, Mrs. Courtenay. He's like, you don't have cancer.
Oh, good. That's a good thing to hear.
Entire year, January to November, finding out I didn't have cancer. So from January to November, and also 4 times scheduled for surgery, and it was blocked by the universe.
Hmm.
So then, as an astrologer, I noticed that there's a planetary energies that were just blocking it. You know, it's amazing how the stars speak. But anyway, all of that to say,
Hmm.
as a result, knowing Reiki and what it's done for so many people, I decided at that. No, actually, I didn't decide. A friend called me out of the blue. She said, "Hey, I'm going to a Reiki circle. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll go." You know, in my mind, I'm like, "I just found out I have cancer. Blah blah blah. Let me go." So I go, and then I decide to actually take try to get my certificates for it. And
Okay.
as doing it, it was the most amazing feeling ever. Like I used to be very religious where they told us that you'd have the Holy Spirit and all of that. And for me, when I was religious, I felt that I was doing good when I was serving God, but it wasn't as though there was anything supernatural that happened. It was more of a mental feeling that made me feel good.
Okay.
So when I started to take Reiki, I was like, I have to see. I don't believe this stuff really works. I'm a skeptic, you know, it's going to take a lot to convince me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and because I'm a naturally curious person, I'm not just going to shut the door anymore. I used to be religious where I'd shut the door and say, I'm not even trying that. But now I'm not religious. So I have permission to try anything I want. So I was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to test it out and see. And Adam, if I tell you, when my Reiki instructor did the initiation for me, I had never in my life felt anything so powerful. Like literally, Adam, and I tell you, this is the truth. She touched me, you know, back here when they're doing the initiation. And as she's doing it, I felt this electric current come in through my neck down into my body. And that's what she was programming the Reiki in energy, or the Reiki symbology, because it's symbols that get programmed into you.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it and it was incredible. And so I came home and I was like, my husband's a skeptic. He'll tell me no, something doesn't work. So I was like, let me try it on him. I ended up ordering a massage table, everything. And I was like, babe, please let me see if this works. Let me see if you feel it. So I put him on the table and then I, you know, put the lights down, everything. And I end up doing Reiki. And with the Reiki, the way that I do it, some people will actually touch the person. For me, I don't touch the person. I prefer to put my hands away from their bodies. And I
Okay.
do that because Reiki is so powerful, even without me touching someone, they're going to feel it. And
Mm.
so I did it that way with my husband because I'm like, this would be a perfect test, being that I'm not even touching him, to see if he feels it. And my husband works so much and he's always busy. Even if he's home, he's doing something because he needs to move, he needs to do things. So I get him on this table and within 5 minutes, he's asleep. And
Wow.
sleep, but he's in this incredible space of feeling how wonderful that energy is. And after a while, you know, when you wake someone up from Reiki, you don't want to startle them. So I basically touched his feet and held his feet till he came back himself. And not that he goes anywhere, just that he was feeling so good, he was sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I was done, I woke him up basically, and I was like, okay. He's like, whoa, wow. He's like, why did you stop? Like literally, Adam. So yeah, so that is where eventually, once I felt the power of it and I understood it, and because I'm not, you know, I came out of the religious philosophy, I understood Reiki from a different level than most Reiki people do, because most Reiki people are associating and communing with angels. And
Okay.
for me, because of my work, I was able to see it from a different vantage point and the overview of what that all means, you know.
Okay.
And so some people, when they do Reiki, they're calling in their guardians and they even give them names or whatever. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I just consider it energy. I don't give it a name. I don't see God. I don't see angels. Some people say they see angels. I don't. So to me, it's simply, you know, get almost like, you know, I made sure I bought my plug for my computer in case the battery was running dead. So
Mm-hmm.
it's plugged into an electrical source that's keeping it working. And it you know, it's a signal. And so that's what Reiki is. And so
Okay.
every symbol that you use has its own signal, and we're antennas and we're receiving messages because, you know, I'm sure you've seen in my work where I talk about how we're essentially computers anyway, and we're living in a computer simulation. So Reiki is one of those software programs that are downloaded to humanity if you know about it and if you know, make use of it. Yeah.
So you made him a believer, it sounds like.
Yeah, he was
Okay.
he was
and,
shocked. And
and
then
can
I
you,
did my son, who's also a skeptic. So,
okay.
well, and my son is the type, you know, he's only 24. And once we left religion, he's the type of person who doesn't want to hear what mom found, doesn't want to know what anyone else found. he wants to just, make his way through life, figuring it out for himself.
Okay.
And yeah, and so that's the wonderful thing, is that I don't have an adherent, I don't have, someone that I've indoctrinated or tried. I wouldn't try to indoctrinate anyone, but I haven't had someone that I indoctrinated testing out whether this works or not, or if it's real. So, and he was shocked. He was shocked. So,
That's amazing. And
yeah.
Reiki works long distance just as well, doesn't it? Is my understanding?
Yes, it does. It
Okay.
does. It was funny because as I'm speaking to you, I went like this, and I was like, I felt energy going towards you,
Okay.
So amazing. I felt it. And so I stopped right away, because I'm like, for as a Reiki person, you're essentially, there are codes of ethics, and that is asking permission for stuff. You don't
Okay.
just someone something without their permission. So it just turns on for me, so I have to kind of like,
Well, I'm okay with sending me any good stuff that you want, so I'm cool with that. Now now that we've got that little curiosity of mine out of the way, so the book, I've read the book. The book answered, I mean, 30 years of questions basically were answered in your book. That yeah, I mean, of deep understanding. It was a misunderstanding for me in those years of trying to grow up in a system, reading a book that I really wanted to understand and put my heart and my life into it. I was never really a religious person, even though that's the structures that I had to kind of be associated with to get the information. But reading your book kind of just, like, I cried out for truth, and then the truth came. And your name's Vera, which means truth, right? So
Isn't that crazy? I mean, that's new, right?
so just, yeah, tell people about your book, because
Yeah. That, my aunt's name was my father's sister. Her name was Lavira. So my sister and I were twins. And so when we have another set of twins, a boy and a girl. And so when they're older than us, so Sherry and Larry. So it kind of rhymes. So when my parents had us, which was a year and a half later, um, here are girl twins. And so being that my Aunt Lavira, they loved her name, they were like, how about we split it up and name one of them Lyra and one of them Vera. So that's
wow.
and it's funny because today she has a lot of money, Lyra, the Lyra, Italy, right? Italy's
Mm,
money. And me, I I have always been willing to lose whatever, not that I was willing, but that I would, whenever the force came, or the urge, no matter what the situation or what I believed, I always would put truth ahead of comfort. And so no matter how uncomfortable dispelling a lie was, it didn't matter, because I naturally had a hunger for whatever the truth was of the matter.
mhm.
And so who knew my parents named me Vera? Like that would be the case, right? Look how powerful giving a child a name is, right?
Very powerful.
Yeah. Um so here I am, my growing up, and my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses. They were involved, but they were also not, I don't want to call my parents hypocrites, but they didn't really follow a lot of the things. And so they would hide some of the things that they were doing, because the Jehovah's Witnesses are a very judgmental religion. So one of the things that they were not allowed to do is smoke cigarettes. And so
Mm,
my parents smoked all the time. They'd smoke in the car. They'd smoke on the way to church or the Kingdom Hall. And as they're doing that, they're telling us, you better not say anything, you know. So here we are at a young age being programmed on how to create this facade that you're following a program when you're really, really not. And these are
Mm,
your parents who you look at as being God almost, that they should always tell the truth. So, you know, so I learned early on how indoctrination can be an imposition on your will. And of course, smoking is bad, but we're dealing with adults, you know, and there are so many things that are bad, but they're not being governed by religion. So I got to see all of that mix of stuff going on. Um, and so as time went on, 35 years of being a Jehovah's Witness, I was teaching people the Bible, you know, what we were indoctrinated to believe with the Bible. I was knocking on doors when I was pregnant with my daughter. It was snowing. I'd still go out because they taught you that in order to, you essentially had to prove your love to God. And the way that you do that is to slave for Him. And so the itinerary for servitude was written by the Jehovah's Witnesses, their organization. And so one of the itinerary was that you go door to door knocking. And so everyone's seen Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, that was me. And I really honestly believed that it was the truth. And one of the words that they use a lot, you know, I would later find out that they use mind control to make you believe it's the truth. One of the things that they would use, one of the words they would use is the word truth, which
mm,
Vera made, right?
okay.
And so, like, this is the truth. You know, we have the truth. Even in conversation in social settings with the people in the religion, they'd say, "Oh, we're so lucky we have the truth." Like all of that was just thrown out. Even if they're answering a question from their literature, they'd say, "This is the truth." So you know, so the constant programming of "this is the truth" was just, we were just inundated. And so, of course, that was the language I would use when I go knocking on doors. Would you like to know the truth? This is the truth. And in my mind, I'm thinking they're telling us that God wants us to save people's lives because God is going to bring destruction upon anyone that doesn't become a Jehovah's Witness. So I don't want anyone to die. So I was like, I'll go out in the snow just to save a life, you know?
Mm,
So you sacrifice so much of yourself. And one of those things and programs of an itinerary was that you're not allowed to go to college. Can you imagine?
wow.
So here I am, you know, since I was a little girl, everybody's like, Vera's going to be a lawyer. Vera's going to be somebody big, right? And I also sang. But the religion's like, no, you don't sing. What do you think you deserve to be on stage so everybody claps for you? People should only clap for God. You know, that's not humble, that's not humility, you know. So they train me with that. So I suppressed my singing. Um, and I could have been famous. And that's not to toot my own horn, but it took me a long time for me to admit my talents as well. Like I would never say to you, "Oh, I can sing." I say, well, some people think I can. You know, that humility was taught by my religion to suppress anything that was good. Any of the I ams that you could possibly be, they're telling you, no, you can't actualize your own identity. You have to kind of mesh in with everyone else, you know? And so you never did anything to showcase your talent or who you were, even your intelligence. So even in school, the teachers are like, Vera, you should go to college. You should do, and I'd be like, well, God doesn't want me to. You know, it would be bad. You know, my religion tells us that God wants us to slave for the kingdom and the end is coming. So if I go to college and the end is coming and I'm at college, there are people that are going to die because I didn't knock on their door and tell them that they had a chance to save their lives. We have the medicine, you know, we have the remedy for death or dying from God, and I'm going to withhold it by wasting my time in college. And they would tell us that the world is going out of business, and they give us dates, and those dates never materialize. And but even when it didn't materialize, they still had you believing they were the truth, so you stayed with them. And so fast forward, not going to college, all of those things. I lost my identity. Like everything about me was other people. And as an astrologer, I have that within my nativity where that would be a struggle for me. You know, Aries again is the sign that says I am. And Aries, you know, depending on where it is in their chart, that part of their makeup, the 1/12, because there are 12 zodiac signs, the 1/12 part of them, Aries, is supposed to be selfish because they're here to find out who they are. It's I am. Who am I, right? And so it is here to put itself first. And so here I am in Aries, but at the same time, my moon, which is your emotions, is in the sign of Libra, which is opposite Aries. So opposite Aries says we are. We.
Ah.
You see that? So
Mm-hmm.
here my sun sign, my brightest part of myself, is opposing my emotional side that says we. So I against we. And so as a result, I would have challenges in my life to me, to who Vera is. And so anytime I would attempt, anytime there was a need to assert Vera, that we part would come into play. We, my religion, everybody else, what everyone else thinks, what the other program is, not what Vera wants, but what I'm here to do for them. That became the battle between those two factors within me. So in my chart, it shows how I would have a point where I would have to overcome that.
Mm.
And you know, who knew there was a purpose to your chart and how it unfolds. And so for me, when I was born as a twin, we came 2 months early and I was 2 pounds. I was in an incubator. I almost died. And I survived. But we came early and we happened to come on a full moon lunar eclipse, which, and when you start to like understand and study it, you realize that those full moons and those eclipses are not just turning on your light in your room. You know, are those are downloads that are being downloaded to the software that is our physical human body. And so that switch being turned on for the full moon lunar eclipse was probably the catalyst to my mother going into labor early.
Okay.
You see how that can happen? Those scenarios can be triggered by what's happening up in the luminaries. And so I was born on a full moon lunar eclipse. So to give you an idea, depending on what phase the moon someone's born on will also show you their purpose. And so for me, a full moon lunar eclipse is very rare. And what it also does, like there are people that have also had it that you know of, and so that helps you to understand things more. Donald Trump was born on a full moon lunar eclipse, right?
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so, you know, whether people like him or don't like him, he came here with a big destiny,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that full moon lunar eclipse at some point in his life in real time would be triggered by the impulses from the planets that are moving around in real time. And so he ran for president, right?
Wow.
He
Yeah.
became president, right?
Mm.
Big life, you know, to happen, right? Famous people, you know, I believe it was Bill Gates as well. So, you know, and not saying that I'm as big as that, but just to show you that there are events in our lives that are set to transpire that we have no idea are even bigger than us. And so
Mm-hmm.
here I am, little Vera. I'm just Vera. Here I am going through my life in these religious phases. I'm in Jehovah's Witnesses. Then I begin to see that that they've been lying to us the whole time because my name is Truth, and I have an insatiable appetite for truth. When I found out they were lying to me, there was no way I could go and knock on doors and tell people this is the truth anymore. So I left that, went to another religion that began to show me more of the Bible. So I'm getting another vantage point into the Bible. And so it's in education, even though that too was absence of truth. but it's a little more true than the other truth. And so I end up getting into that. And then eventually I lived in France. We moved to France. And as I'm in France, it was just the four of us, my two children and my husband. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. And I also had a lot of books that I was not allowed to read when I was religious that I started to purchase and buy. I started watching YouTube because I didn't even know anything about YouTube. So I started watching YouTube. I created a channel. I gave my experience of leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. Who knew that I would stop there? And so as I began to read the books that I was reading and also began to watch YouTube, and then also feeling these movements in me, not literally, but that's the best way that I can explain it, these urges and these triggers that were much bigger than me. I mean, I remember when we left the country, I told my husband, I said, I have to leave here. And he's like, why? I was like, I just have to. And I was like, and he's like, babe, you're studying so much. You're looking at all this stuff so much. Why are you doing it so much? And I was like, honey, I was like, please understand that if I don't do this, I'm going to die. Like, Adam, I literally felt like I was going to die. That's how powerful this summoning, these urges were
Wow.
to unravel and unmask. And so fast forward to today, and in retrospect, I look at every event that happened. I look at my nativity, and I'm like, this was destined from the trigger of my mother giving birth to us on a full moon lunar eclipse to now. Because who is Vera that she has the audacity to challenge in a book the status quo, the patriarchy, the institutions that hold up the indoctrinations, the thinking, the belief systems of the entire human family. Like, who I would have never even thought that would be me. Like, you know?
Right, right.
So yeah. And so I had the audacity to put what I was uncovering in a book. I didn't know I was even writing a book. That's how it unfolds. You don't know, right?
Right.
I'm sure you understand. You
Hmm.
don't know how the future will unfold. You don't even know what you're going to be tomorrow. Who am I, right? How many commas are you going to put on your identification? And so, yeah. And so when I wrote the book, I'd never written a book before. I did a little poetry. Uh, but I knew that this was bigger than me, and I had to find a way to take what's in here and as simply as I could put it there. And at the same time, I have a lot of um, creative energy in me. I also have a lot of the planet Venus that endows its beauty on me. I'm not saying physically or anything. I'm just saying as relating to art and poetry. And so even when I write something that is a practical statement, there's going to be a little flowery prose on it, you know? So I was like, how do I make sure that that entire soup put into my book is going to bring forth the authenticity of Vera, my truth, as well as taking people on a journey step by step so that they could visualize the outcome as I did. So you can imagine how difficult that was. And so once the book was completed, I realized that not that there was something higher writing it for me, but I realized that I didn't do that. It just unraveled on its own.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I I want to interact more, but I noticed that the audio, if I say something while you're talking, it kind of cuts you out a little bit. So
I,
usually I'm more interactive, but I wanted to give you that space so you could actually get your words out, and they would, for the recording and everything, they would be good. So um, yeah, it's amazing because this was like a 12-year process for you, wasn't it? Or I mean,
yeah.
it wasn't quick, it wasn't easy, and you did so much studying, so much studying.
Yeah.
Um, go ahead.
No, yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, when is the first time you heard about the Anunnaki? Because that's basically what a big part of your book talks about. Do you want to describe that a little bit and talk about when you found that information out?
Yes, yes. Yeah, so when I was a Jehovah's Witness, they wanted to prove or convince us of the flood in the Bible. And so one of the ways that, they programmed us and told us that every other religion is a lie, a lie. Any other religious concept is a lie. Don't ever look at it. Don't ever believe it. Don't even look. You're not smart enough. We do that work for you. We feed you what you should look at and what you should believe. So in the course of that, they told us that the flood happened, and well, guys, we can prove it to you historically, because other cultures around the world, besides the Christian culture and the Judaic culture, they also speak that there was a great flood that happened all around the world. And so little did I know the repetition of that would aid me as I moved forward in my progression of leaving religion and moving into my next step. And I'm glad you said a process, because that's exactly how it unfolds. And so when they said that every culture has the story of the flood, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that does verify the Bible's right and the flood. Yeah, and I left it there. So as you fast forward through my process, I remember when I became a Hebrew Israelite, people on the feed, like the YouTube feed, how people can interact, I'd see people saying, well, what about the Anunnaki? And then my religious instructor would say, oh, that's ridiculous, and gave his schmeal. And he's so intelligent. Even to this day, I respect him. I was like, oh, yeah, he answered that question. That's sufficient. So fast forwarding from that point in my journey, when I lived in France and I was disconnected physically from any church community, and I began just reading on my own, anything that I was curious about, I started to try to get books on and uncover myself. And so being that I was no longer officially in a religious group like Jehovah's Witnesses, where they were telling me what I cannot look at, I realized that I had permission to start investigating things. And the new religious philosophy I was in, they weren't overseeing things like my old religion did. So they didn't really interject their rule of law on me that I can't look at other stuff. So I bought other books, and as I'm looking through other books, I realized that there are a lot of Bible books that are not included in the Bible. And so, of course, I want to know what those have to say. So, and my new religious teacher did teach from some of those books. So that gave me permission to say, okay, it have to be part of the Bible. So I wanted to know for sure for myself. So I ended up reading the Pseudepigrapha, the Gnostic texts, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilee, the book of Adam and Eve, the book of Abraham, the book of Baruch, and there's so many, so many. In fact, the Bible is like this size, and it really should be this size, right, from my elbow up. That's how many books are like removed from it. So being that I didn't see the Catholic Church as an authority or religion as an authority anymore, I was like, who are they to canonize and not canonize books that are just as old and found in the first century, and also in the caves of Qumran, just the same as the books they approved, the 66 that they approved. So I'm going to look at these. And then when I read the book of Samuel, I believe it's Second Samuel. It could be first or second, but I think it's Second Samuel 1 verse 18. I could be wrong. I haven't looked at it in a long time. But anyway, when I read that in the Bible, there it says, behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. And I was like, the Bible says in the book of Samuel, it mentions the book of Jasher? Like, what? And so I was like, let me get that pseudepigrapha that I ordered. And so I got it and I flipped to the book of Jasher. And I was like, if the Bible mentions it, then it's giving me permission to believe it. And not only believe it, but read it again. And so I began to read it again. And that book was just, whoa. I mean, even now, not being a religious person, I see that as part of the unfoldment of history for humanity. And so in that, it gives you clues of even today, like the way they're splicing animals and things like that. It's just really a powerful look into the past. And so I'm reading the book of Jasher, and the Bible verifies the book of Jasher. And I'm like, oh my goodness, why doesn't the world know about this? And it also filled in parts of the Bible that just leave you hanging. Like, what does the Bible mean by this? The Bible doesn't elaborate. Those other books fill you in on the rest of the story. And so the book of Jasher, I read the book of Jubilees, and then I began to like understand why the Bible talks about the 70 years of Jubilee and the 50 years, like all of those like numbers and special months and things like that. It's explained in the book of Jubilee. So I'm like, okay, this is another book that should be part of the Bible. And so as time went on, it began to unfold where now I'm reading the Gnostic texts and I'm reading the Apocalypse of Paul and the Apocalypse of John. And then John tells us that, there's a construct to the gods that are not what the Bible tells us about. John tells us about how, the Bible tells us in the book of Genesis chapter 6 that the sons of God came down to have relations with the daughters of men, but it just leaves it there, right? And so when you read all of these other pseudepigraphal books, some of them go into that. In fact, the books of Enoch go heavily into what that means. It doesn't wake you up to understand the entire overview of what you and I know now, but it gives enough of the hints where when you begin to start delving into the story of the Anunnaki, it now fills in the overview of the full story and not the pieces. So all of these books and in the Bible, they were just pieces to a puzzle that my journey and my process brought me on grabbing all those pieces of the puzzle, so that eventually I'd be able to look and stand over it and say, oh, this is where this fits. This is where this fits. And now this is the canvas. And so the canvas enabled me to see through these extra pieces that the canvas and the missing ingredient, the missing link, was ancient Sumeria. Now, I mentioned before how my former religion was like, hey, the flood happens all over the world. This is historically true. So that's where that comes into view, because the story of the flood now is corroborated in the ancient tales of Sumeria, which is where the entire Garden of Eden, so Sumeria is the Garden of Eden where it all began. And so the flood now corroborated the stories that I was reading about the Anunnaki, where Zarathustra, who was one of the children that, according to the ancient Sumerian texts, I'll get to that, I'll kind of fill that in. The Sumerian text, Zarathustra was Noah. So do you see how Noah now fits in with my original programming of my former religion, talking about the flood happening around the world and how that now fit with the piece of the Anunnaki. And so
Yes.
little things like that Adam became the nuggets to fill in my puzzle piece, my puzzle.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. That's why it took you so long to study that too, because there was so much to piece together. It's like when you say that, I think you buy those big giant puzzles and you have your big kitchen table and you've got the 1,000 pieces or 5,000 pieces and you're just trying to build the edges and then make the picture.
Yep.
So
It seems like, Adam, I'm telling you, I felt like, and here I am, I would try to sleep and I couldn't sleep because as I'm sleeping, the downloads are coming to me. And I'm waking up writing on a pad what to talk about, like what to add to my pieces later, because stuff was even coming to me as I was sleeping. And it wasn't like there was this angel bringing information to me, but because I was gathering the pieces, now my spirit was now bringing it all together for me. So it was an incredible process, an incredible journey that is just phenomenal. It was extremely tiresome because I didn't sleep. I was eating this food. I was eating the search. It was insatiable. And it was also had levels of frustration because there was no one that I could find that could put it together for me. There was no one. I mean, Sakurai Stitching gave the information for the Anunnaki. The visual of the Anunnaki I've been seeing through all my religious instruction of the Sumerians, how they drew on stone. That was obvious that they were speaking about aliens, but because I hadn't connected all the dots, I didn't understand what I was seeing. So I had to go to different sources that had nothing to do with one another and try to put together this masterpiece that wasn't really a masterpiece. It was just an impossible connection, an impossible masterpiece. I don't know. And I think masterpiece may be a good word because it was bigger than just me, bigger than just you. And so it had to evolve and come together in a way that I don't think I would have ever thought I was capable of doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's mind boggling all the stuff that you've put together, but it fits so well and it's explained so well. And yet there's still so much more. I mean, you probably could write another 2 or 3 books and just start scratching the surface. But at least what it did for me is it put the picture together. I got to see the puzzle after you put it together. And then it made me go like, oh, studying the Bible for 20, 30 years and all these questions just in an instance, seeing the picture you put together, it's like, really? No way. I mean, who would have thought? Because I don't want to get into my exact questions, I guess, because maybe we can do a part 2 or a part 3 and we can talk about stuff like that. But what I would love to do is ask a few questions just to see what you've gotten from your studies and what your opinion is. So let me grab my questions.
Sure.
So what is the difference in your understanding between religion and spirituality? Or is there a difference?
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, I mean, I think when you have evolved out of both, I mean, when you have evolved out of religion, like you and I, those two terms become easily definable because you've understood each process. You've lived through the processes. In astrology, one of the zodiac signs is Sagittarius. Another one is Gemini. They oppose one another. So again, they're on opposite ends. So they have the alternate quest that the other one doesn't. So Gemini says, I communicate. So Gemini is here to communicate. Sagittarius, which is across from it, says, I grow. So not only is Gemini here to communicate, but they're also here. They also say, I research. The internet exists. The possibility of researching in books exists because of the Gemini energy. So Gemini says, I research. And then when I research, I communicate. I'm going to tell you what I read in the book. That's Gemini. But Gemini is simply just hearsaying, right? It's just telling you what they read in the book. Sagittarius is here for the quest to grow. So Sagittarius is not only, it owns the energy of higher education. So not only is it being earning its degrees through knowledge and learning, but it's also expanding that by experiencing it.
Mm.
Okay, right? And so you and I have gone on this quest through spirituality, which is Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules religions as well. And so we've gone through this quest to grow, not only to learn like Gemini, to communicate like Gemini, to research like Gemini, but to now experience it. You can say what India is all about, but if you haven't traveled there, you can't tell me about India, right? And so that is the difference between religion and spirituality. Gemini is the book. It's the doctrine. It's the religious formula. It's the program.
Mm.
Whereas Sagittarius is living through it, spirituality, feeling it, being it, symbiosis of it all, and then coming out with the education of it all. And so some people just use the word spirituality as just a label, but in reality, you don't know what spirituality is unless you have grown to that understanding. Because some people who are religious say, I'm spiritual, right? But they're in a program, they're in Gemini, right? They haven't traveled to India. So they haven't lived as an Indian. They haven't eaten their food, felt the people, looked at their culture, understood it, because they haven't lived it. And so that's the difference between experience and indoctrination or programs. It's the difference between Gemini, it's the difference of, and Sagittarius. It is the difference between being young and being older, wisdom, right? So sometimes your kids go to school and they come home and they think they're smarter than you, right? But they haven't tested what they learned, so they have no wisdom,
Yep.
right? So really, the true definition of spirituality, and we understand this when we get there, is that it is the wisdom of having lived through the experiences and eventually reaching the destination of what is truth and what is not. And truth is, there's absolutes and there's some that are truth for a moment, right? Because truth also evolves, it has its own evolution. And so I would say, through my little definition of spirituality, is that spirituality is the overview of of knowing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your explanation. It makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of simplifies it too. It,
Right.
it actually puts it into a simple way to understand. And you don't get that a lot sometimes. So
And that's like, and that evolving through spirituality enables an individual who is here for to grow, right? Sagittarius says I grow. It enables a person to live through the spirit where there is no need for a book of rules, right? So naturally, you and I, Adam, we're going to meet someone and we're going to treat them good,
Mhm.
right? We're going to love people no matter who they are. We're going to love them, right? If somebody's hungry, you're going to feed them. That is spirituality because it is fluid. It doesn't check a verse to see if it's okay to feed that person, right? It doesn't check the rules. It just expresses. It does. It moves, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yes. So here's another question. Where does our intuition and psychic abilities come from?
Wow. Powerful. Okay, so again, I like to go to a certain point and then come around a bit. That's how I learn. So I don't know why I naturally share like that, but that I guess we're who we are, right?
Yeah.
So all of us have within us think of, I mentioned before how we are these computers, right? So think about, I think when I did your reading, I mentioned this. When you look at computers, there are different versions. There's MacBook, there's Microsoft, there's Dell, right? All these different versions. Each of them have their own manual with their own program. And so a Dell book, if a Dell book is breaking down, it's not going to go to the manual of a MacBook, right? So you go to the actual manual that corresponds with that program. And so each of us have these programs within us, depending on the moment that we were born, the time that we were born, even the womb that we came from, the ancestry that we came from, your mother, your father, all of those relate to the moment that you were born. And so depending on the configuration of a person's nativity, they will have certain gifts and traits and talents. And because we are living in the spectrum of a matrix, each person, each tribe, each country, each will correspond to their very own manual and computer program. And so there are some people that are gifted in the area of sight and vision and psychic abilities. There are some people that are their program is their ability to be able to emote in certain ways. And so each person corresponding to their program will now live out, react, interact with the world by the vibration that they have. Now, sometimes it doesn't work for someone. It may be in their program, but there are glitches, right? Just like a computer, right? There are viruses. So if something breaks down, a Dell book is going to go to the Dell manual to figure out how to fix it, right? So if someone is here and it is their job, it is in their program, it is in their manual to be psychic, and they're not doing it, they're going to have glitches. They're going to have problems. They're going to have, how do you say, incorrect experiences in the world because they are not vibrating or working in the design that they were made. And so saying all of that, each of us have our corresponding abilities. Some people are more psychic than others. Some people can see the dead. Some people cannot. I can't. Some people can talk to the dead. Some people cannot. I can't. But I know people who can. And so when I was in the religious mindset, you think that's demons, right? That's the devil. God doesn't want you to do that. And I used to be like, well, why would a person have this ability and be made by God, wonderfully made, and your God is condemning them for doing something they can't control, you know? And so once I began to delve into astrology more, I began to understand the makeup of individuals and how some people came here for that. And so by them not understanding it, they begin to malfunction. They begin to have depression. They begin to break down. They begin to think something's wrong with them, that they're not godly because they're getting these impulses and things like that. And so all of those things are available depending on how much you have in your chart for someone to access. And it must be understood. Our society and our world is broken. And one of the reasons that it is broken is that we are not taught to consult our manual. We are not taught to understand that there are glitches and breakdowns of our hardware because the software is being blocked. So if someone's software from the planets are sending down the program as you sleep, right? We shut down our computer so it can update, right? So when we go to bed, we're updating. But if we are not vibrating in the frequency of our nativities and our manual, our program individually, then there are blockages that begin to happen. So even within your anatomy, within your own biology, there are parts of your body that will now experience blockages, and those software downloads cannot penetrate it because you blocked it for too long. And so some people who are psychic now have glitches in their ability to be psychic. Some people are speaking to untoward spirits that are evil entities. Some people are possessed. And that is because of the blockages. That is because of the lack of understanding, the lack of Sagittarius being able to read the book and figuring out how to fix yourself, how to fix others. This is a gift that this is a gift of a manual, astrology, that humanity can apprise themselves of, but they don't, because the idea is that we do malfunction, that we do not work, so that we are dependent upon the junk food of the programs of religion, indoctrination, hating ourselves, guilt. All of those things are now creating blockages, so that some of the gifts that we are all capable of, we're not being able to fully manifest.
Wow. That's a good explanation too. You're on a roll.
You are too.
So, that this is kind of a little deeper question, because maybe if somebody hasn't read the book, but I want to ask it anyway, because hopefully people will read the book. Is astrology or the planets or anything of how we get those codes or how we come in anything to do with the Anunnaki?
Wow. That is an advanced question.
Okay.
Yes. So, my book is titled The Age of I Know, Unmasking the Magicians. And so you mentioned before how I probably could write another book. And the thing is, I wrote it years ago. And because I'm Aries, I have a lot of Aries energy too. I procrastinate. And because I have learned to live in the spirit, I know that even when I wrote the first book, I couldn't push it. I didn't sit down and say, I'm writing today. No, I was not involved. It was just like, and not that some angel was impulsing me. It was just, okay, I just sit down and just start. It was in the spirit, right? And so my other book has like 600 pages. It's been sitting here for like 7 years. And it's the next level to understanding more overview of it all. And it's just like sitting there. So what I realized is that I can't rush anything, because it's almost like I feel like it had some people were not like you, who were exposed to my work and they weren't ready for it. They could break down. They could glitch. Right? And so I feel like the universe, not like this consciousness said, let's slow Vera down. I just feel like the momentum of even the rhythm of my nativity with the planets was kind of slowing the whole process down. So fast forward to today, I ended up doing a documentary instead, because I thought I'd take the easy way out and put down what I wanted to take from here and share with the people in a documentary. And because I'm so terrible at computers, the outcome and overview was so good. I was like, I didn't do that. It just unfolded. I'm like, whoa, what did I say? Like that kind of thing. But the imagery, the pictures and stuff aren't like, takes away from what I'm saying. So I have to kind of fix that again. But anyway, within that information, I share the different levels of the Anunnaki and how this world works and how it's constructed and how it all plays in together, and the overview of the whole thing. And so hopefully I get to finish that documentary and put it all together. But in short, yes, everything, all roads in our entire world in our entire matrix, all roads lead to the Anunnaki.
Wow. So let me just throw out a couple words. The understanding or the concept of hell, Anunnaki.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The concept of afterlife, heaven, and the other place that we just discussed.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I mean, it's so much. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
What were we before they intervened?
Wow. Wow. You are just like so advanced. Like yeah, so when I had delving into all of these things, I also started to study the ancient land of Mu. I studied and read Oaspi, which is another Bible written by a man in the 1800s. And um, he talks about Jehovah and all of those things like that. So when I began to look at Oaspi, there was someone who's very well versed in it. So I was able to like ask them questions, and then it kind of led me on to actually read it myself. And as I gathered that nugget, it was adding to the pieces of the puzzle as well that the Bible leaves you off from. And I was able to look at that and be able to fill in more of the framework of how everything kind of works. And as I went on with them, I began to, Awaspi began to talk about certain things too, as far as the beginning. And after I was done reading Awaspi, it wasn't absolute truth, but it was enough to be sufficient in bringing me to the next steps of the overview. And so it speaks about how some of the fallen came and how initially there were sentient beings here, even in Lemuria. So and this filled me in too, because I have been studying ancient cultures all around the world, the Vedic religion, Bhagavad Gita texts, China, Taoism in Japan, and brought all of those into the overview of understanding. And so when I started to study Lemuria, I began to study about the Nagas and the snake people and the things like that. So when I'd see artifacts from around the world in different countries in the past, I'd see these snake people, and it's like, what were those people smoking? Like, when they did that artwork, what were they thinking? And then later on, I was able to tie it in and be able to understand how they fit into the timeline of humanity, and how those timelines were pre our timeline. And then Atlantis comes into the picture. And so all of those different timelines of humanity, when we look back even on the artwork, they were all telling a story. And all of those stories are validated when you dig into actual history. And so a lot of these ancient cultures speak about how, again, there were sentient beings here. There were different types of man that were already here. There have been many experiments on Earth. Besides the Anunnaki, I did a video recently on my channel speaking about the 24 elders. And so that is an entire book unto itself, but in short, there were many different types of aliens or ETs that interfered in the process of the human spirit. What enlivens our shell, our physical body. And so many of them interfered in that process. And a lot of that is what makes us different than them, which makes them envious of us as humans as well. So even though a lot of these different beings and gods, for lack of a better word, contributed to what we are today, the unfoldment of modern man, a lot of them are also envious of who we are in the totality of our possibilities. And so you mentioned before about intuition and psychic. We're so much more than the shell. We're multi-talented, we're multi-gifted. and they understand that and they know that. And so again, when they came and there was this spark of energy that they were able to use and encase it, they took advantage of that.
Mm, mm.
Mhm.
That's a good explanation of that as well. And that really makes your mind stretch. That really is a lot of info to be studied. So you mentioned angels, like, you're not really an angel person per se from the information that you know, but there's so many people that are, and
Mhm.
some people say they see the angels. Some people have had experiences like saved from car wrecks, saved from, how would you explain that on that level, um, of how that stuff can seemingly manifest for
Mhm.
people, but yet you see it from a different angle or a different understanding of it?
Great question
Oh,
again.
okay.
Yeah. So, like for instance, like here it is, I'm not a religious person anymore. I don't believe the Bible is, to be revered. I just believe that it's the cliff notes of Sumeria, the tales of Sumeria. It's a cliff note. So putting that together with the other cliff notes and the other historical information of mankind's unfolding through our history, that's how I consider it, history books. Um, Here I am today, and I'm just like, um, I'm trying to figure out how I want to like kind of word it, but so all of those books and all of the testimonies, even the Bible says by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, all of the testimonies from all around the world, I appreciate because they all help you to understand what is happening in the unseen realm, right? And so all of those things verify in it, and in their accuracy describe even those who are the hierarchy of the matrix. And so within the fabric of the matrix, there are different levels of messengers, duties to be performed. And so not all of that is done by physical man, but it's done by energies that we can't see. They still have form, but because we're in the third dimension, they're in other dimensions and they can come through the veil. The Bible talks about how the veil was removed. They have the ability to go through wormholes and vortexes and manifest into our realm as well and interact with us. As I mentioned, there are some people in the nativity that have the ability to even communicate or see the dead. So they'd be able to even see those entities more than perhaps me. So they do exist. The difference with me is that I don't revere them. I know their roles. I know how it all fits into the scheme of things. And so because of that, I consider religion having been designed by the Anunnaki as a way not only to create battery sources of energy for them through reverence and worship, but also to continue in a program. So I keep that on the shelf where it is. I respect it for what it is. And so bringing that into how I express myself when it comes to those entities, I don't revere them. I don't worship them. I don't pray to them. I don't even see them like other people. I'm not connected in the way that, let's say, a Pisces would be. Um, I understand their role. I've unraveled their mystery. I've unmasked who they are. And so I choose not to be a battery source.
Um,
Because once you interact, there are different levels of exchanges that happen. And so an individual that has evolved from religion to spirituality now realizes that there are repercussions that can unfold if they surrender enough of themselves to be encased, or let's say possessed, for lack of a good word, by these entities, because those possibilities do exist. You know, there are entities on the other side that you don't want to mess with. And so, being that we have not graduated in the ability to navigate through that realm, the safest place for us to be is by choice, by my choice. Someone else may be capable of interacting and being safe. My choice is to operate in the physical realm and not entertain the other side. And so that is perhaps why they don't come to me. That is perhaps why, even when I do meditations with Reiki, some people say they see their God, their guardian angels. I don't. I feel like I've always been protected from outside interference and possessions. And so, yeah, so I feel like my soul is here to attempt, I feel like it'll be many lifetimes, but attempt to master the physicality of where we are rather than the, yeah.
So just a little understanding on my part. Like when I was younger, I was in a car accident, and I could be wrong, but I felt like the car rolled. I felt like a big angel grabbed the car and made it so I didn't get hurt.
Wow.
Would you, and are you saying in your life that you wouldn't want the help of an angelic being if you were in need in your own life
No,
circumstances?
that's so beautiful that that happened to you. And that does happen. And I literally feel like I have a guardian angel too, because
Okay.
there's been lots of things. I feel very protected, though I don't see them. And they have not there's a different, some people who consider themselves not religious but spiritual. If you look at different religious spiritual practices, there are many practices that engage with otherworldly spirits. And some of those practices can put spells on people. Some of those practices, people can become possessed by those practices or by those beings that come here because they want us. We're batteries, we're powerful to them, and they know it. And if they can latch onto our energy source, it makes them more powerful in their realm to navigate through their realm with more power. The gods have levels of being gods, right?
Mm,
And so there are, though, entities, just like there are human beings that are bad, in the way we see it, and there are those who are very good, they're benevolent. There are angelic forces that are good. And so, in recognition of them, I consider them, for me, my guardian angel, but they don't ask for anything back.
okay.
That's the difference. You get it?
Yes,
That's
yes.
different. They've never come to me and said, Vera, you've never been without a meal. You've always had a nice home to live in. It's humble, but it's always nice. You've always had a car, you don't have to worry about a breakdown. You have money in the bank. We did that for you. Why aren't you praying to us? Why aren't you making libations to us?
Right.
Never, never.
So you see the good ones as helpers, but they're helpers in the way that they would want to help without anything coming back from us.
That's beautiful. You put it perfectly.
Okay.
and and I don't condemn anyone for eventually reaching that level where they decide to have a reciprocity. If someone did that, I believe that we are all here to graduate in our own process, and there's no judgment there, and there shouldn't be. And so it works for some people, it doesn't work for some people, and that is the beauty of the experience, right? It's so beautiful. It's tailor made.
Absolutely. Um, that brings up a little question about tools, like tools of spirituality. Like I'm sure your cards, because astrology is kind of a tool. Some people do cards and use like that. What's your take on that stuff?
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, and I like that you called it a tool because this is a confusing realm, especially when you're in religion and that is fed to you as a totality of everything. You are dependent upon a food source that is really oftentimes taking more from you than it's given to you. It's also taking advantage of you, your naivete, your desire not to find out and seek on your own. So you're like, hey, do the homework for me, right? Um, so a lot of these people or entities, or not entities, but I'm talking in real life, the physical form. A lot of these corporations, organizations, people that you see are powerful and successful, a lot of them are making use of the tools that we are told are evil, that
Mm,
we are told are taboo. We live in the realm of the Anunnaki that they created. And in part of that realm is the corresponding energies between the cosmos and Earth. And so astrology, tarot, the pendulum, all of those things avail themselves so that you can understand how energy is expressed and how energy can create patterns. And by seeing those things, it enables you to be self-dependent, independent, sovereign, because it is a tool that helps you to navigate a realm that can otherwise be confusing, that can otherwise be you can fall into a pit, that will not give you the answers that fit you, that are tailor-made for you. It's like we're all putting on the same suit. We're all wearing the same uniform. And guess what? Some people are bigger than other people, right? Some people need a pocket for their lipstick. Some people don't wear lipstick, right? And so all of us are just trying to fit into this one suit, and we wonder why we're broken. I'm a Dell book, you're a MacBook, and I'm reading your manual when I'm breaking down and I'm having a glitch, right? And so astrology and tarot are an explanation of energies. It's a forecast. When the weatherman says it's going to rain, a lot of times they get it right. And if you didn't bring an umbrella, you're going to get wet. And so astrology gives you the eyes into the possibilities of how the program being downloaded here can manifest, the different ways that it can manifest, the patterns that it can create. And
mm,
so who wouldn't, in wisdom, want to avail themselves to something that is going to help them to improve, to make better decisions, or not that it's a crutch, but that it's informative? Who doesn't want more information, right? And so we look at these corporations and people that are successful, and all of them are using these. People are like, hey, I'm not buying Starbucks anymore because there's a logo on their cup, right? But when a lot of them who are religious in the spiritual form, they don't understand that there are sigils that people can make, which are structures and designs that they're drawing, and they're putting the intention in that specific drawing, that it creates certain circumstances and possibilities and unfolding for them. And so Starbucks putting that symbol is really a sigil so that they could become as successful as they are. And so your car has a symbol on it, a sigil on it, right? And so they're using magic, which is really not magic. It is just access to power, to to um to being able to participate in your life rather than becoming a victim to whatever unfolds, because you were not naive as to the fact that it was even coming your way, or as to the fact that, there might be, with astrology, when you understand who you are, knowledge of self, 360 degrees, you're getting degrees. Like you're in the university of life. Each sign is 30 degrees. And so how do you master 30 degrees of 12 parts of yourself, but to know yourself? And so if you don't know how you are made up in those degrees, then you're just walking with a blindfold. You're not participating, And so a surgeon doesn't just go in and perform surgery on someone that needs it. They're going to take images of that particular anatomy. They're going to inspect it, and they're going to be prepared that when they go in there, they know exactly where to cut, exactly what it is they want to take out or put in. That's what you're doing when you're using the tools that are available to every single one of us.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, you're saying that, say a good company, I wouldn't have to say good, but a company who's successful in the measurement of finances and a lot of customers, they have this symbol that they've created. And it's basically like they created their own key to tap into the success.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay. So
that's perfect. It's a key. Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
and they even know astrology. Most of your political, your governments, everything, they're consulting astrologers. Ronald Reagan was known to do that as well. He was even told that he would have been shot, right? So one of the things that a lot of these businesses use as well to bring success their way is the date that they open. If you open on a date where the planets are like fighting, then you're going to have a contentious business. If you open a job, if you open a business where the stars and the planets are in alignment and agreement, and in the wealth sector and the success sector, then you bring success to yourself. And so all of us, like normal people, we're just walking around, starting businesses, opening up businesses, and we're just randomly picking dates. And these guys are like, they're so equipped that they're laughing at us because they are participating in the outcome through knowledge, not through, just being blindfolded. So even the day you get married affects your marriage. What kind of marriage you're going to have? Is it going to be a contentious marriage? Is it going to be happy? Is that the right person for you? Or does your nativity butt heads with their nativity? So in the old days, before there was religion, there was astrology. Astrology was the religion. You would consult one of the astrologers to find out when you opened a business, when you had children, when you got married. All of those things were forecasts for you so that you could participate in the benefits of those outcomes.
And do you do that for people? Is there people that come to you and say, I want to start a business? When's the best day and time or for my...
I don't do that in my practice of astrology. There are people that specialize in that. There are even astrologers that I know how to do it, but I've never done it for people. I do it for myself. But there are also people that, can tell you where you'll live better. If you move, you'll have better results. So even where you live is a factor in the energy that's being beamed down to you, because those are coordinates. And there is more favor sometimes in different coordinates of where you are. And so even your natal chart changes a bit depending on where you move. So all of these things, I say that to say that these people who are knowledgeable, who are the elite, they are taking advantage of all of the programs in the matrix to help benefit them. And here we are, we're just like strings on us, right? We're just like, and this is why there are classes within in society and in the world, because the bottom will always stay on the bottom.
Yeah. And so in one aspect, what I hear you saying is that religion was created in a certain way to keep people on the puppet strings.
Exactly.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Can you tell people how they can connect with you, where they can contact you?
Sure. My email is Vera 360 degrees, so 360, and degree spelled out at gmail.com. So Vera 360 degrees at gmail.com. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you've got your channel.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah. So on YouTube, I am Vera 747. So Vera, VERA 747. And that's it. Because I'm so not computer savvy, Adam, that I wouldn't even know how to set my website, nothing. So if you notice, I stay small, and I'm very rarely on YouTube and things like that. It's not because I don't want to be, because I feel like I just want to scream from the mountaintops. I want people to be free. At
Yes.
the same time, respecting people's journey. So YouTube is composed of channels, because you go to the channel of people channeling that you are ready to receive their information. So that's kind of where I keep my channeling for people's, choice to go there or not. But I'm as small as the universe wants me to be, but my information is bigger than that. So I realize that there's a larger platform to be had, but I haven't been impulsed to to do it, because I don't even know computers. So I figured if, in astrology, Aries again says I am, it's here for itself. It is in astrology, it's the first of the zodiac. So that makes it the number one. So it's kind of like a boss. And because I've been here with my opposite Libra fighting against me and picking us, I've neglected the Aries part. So for a long time, until this whole change happens, and the universe came and hit the Aries and said, nope, now I'm activating that. You're going to use your Aries to challenge religion, to challenge the matrix, right? So we're going to give you the impetus to now be a boss somehow, or be a pioneer somehow. And so because of that, Aries being the boss does not carry out the duties that it thinks of. So I think of the stuff. If I had a Virgo come along who could be a great secretary, I would give them what I need them to do for me so that I could just speak. Right? You
Yeah,
get it?
absolutely.
And so because I don't have that, I stay as small as I do.
So you need somebody to delegate to.
Right. And that's what every sign plays their role. Right. And so one day in the world, hopefully if the world ever gets fixed and astrology becomes a tool that is used, it'll enable everyone to work in accord with their program. And then imagine how great the world would be if that happens.
Absolutely. Now, your book is on Amazon, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So Amazon, again, the book is The Age of I Know, Unmasking the Magicians, All Religions Exposed, by Vera
Awesome.
Courtenay. So, mhm.
And you pronounce your last name. How do you pronounce it?
Courtenay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Courtenay.
So it's so hard for me because I just want to keep asking questions, but I also
That's
don't
okay.
want to. I don't want to take your time either.
Time to you. I have a little more time, so it's up to you.
Okay. Okay. what do you see happening over the next year or so?
Wow. From an astrological point of view,
Uh-huh.
or
Uh-huh. Or well, both, whatever you think.
so I did a video on my YouTube channel, Vera 747, and this was, I think I did it in 2016. I forget, or 17. And it essentially I shared what would be happening between the years 2020 through 2024, but really the residual effects 2026. So essentially the forecast for those number of years. And in it, I said basically that we would not recognize our world. And astrologically, the planets, the law of correspondence says as above, so below. So what the planets are speaking in the sky is how when those things are being down here to Earth, we now react to those energies in that conversation, and it plays out in real time through the human experience. And so I had mentioned that from the years 2020 through 2024, really specifically, that there would be a conflict between humanity, the 99%, and the elite, the governments and the people, and how specifically for America, we were reaching a point in our nativity where we were having a birthday of the energies of 1776 in our experience at this time, but on steroids. And so that deciphering or translation that I gave is what's manifesting here. And so within the next year, and as well, I didn't mention a virus, but in retrospect, looking at the chart that I was examining, it does speak of a virus. And so not only does it speak of did it always speak of a virus? Like an astrologer can look hundreds of years into the future kind of thing, right?
Wow.
We just get what the planets, where they're going to be, and it tells us the conversation. And so looking ahead, I saw that, looking at it in retrospect, you were able to see how there was a problem with a virus that would infect the lungs, because Gemini was involved. Gemini rules the lungs, and Pisces was also involved. Pisces also rules viruses. So
Mm.
this is how the language of astrology works. You define the planet, that tells you the language that it would be speaking and it depends on where it is as well. So there's a lot in the mix. But so in addition, we were having the visitation of certain planets that bring complete destruction. We have a planet that brings, let's say, hell on Earth, which is Pluto, which was also having a conversation with another planet that brings the patriarchy, discipline, law, and order into question. And so all of those things now were being ignited, or let's say deconstructed, demolished, so that now we see what's going on today. And so those planets for a long time have been speaking this language that, okay, guys, get yourselves together, start figuring out your money, get your household in order, because not only that, but we're going to change your money as well. I had mentioned that in the video that there would be some kind of change to the earth, because we have a planet Uranus that when it visits a certain sign on the wheel, it stays there for 7 years. And when it stays there, it's there to do a duty, to do a job. And that duty and its job corresponds to its program. So the program of Uranus is to bring technology, advancements in technology, medicine, and also the internet, and also to bring revolution, right? And so all of that in the sign that deals with the earth, money, security, that planet going there is now destroying all of that. So everything we ever thought was stabilizing for us, was security for us, is now being activated to now fall apart on us. So we're all sitting around, we're just like, I'm in my house, but I don't feel safe anymore. I have money, but I don't feel like I have control anymore. I have food, but I don't feel like I'm full. So now, you have people who I've seen an article where people gained like 40 pounds during the pandemic because all of those things that were stabilizing for us as a human family are now being demolished. And we're just like, what kind of world is this? Our laws are changing. We see laws being broken that we always thought was the fabric of our societies. And now those aren't even being obeyed. There are sinister things going on. So even the planets are speaking that the hierarchy or the elite would also be doing clandestine procedures behind the backs of the people.
Mhm.
And so the question is, between the people and the hierarchy, between the law and the people, the governments and the people, the money and the people, the advanced technology and the people, are we going to just sit back and allow them to construct the world that we will see tomorrow? Or are we going to start participating in it? Are we going to believe that someone else is our savior? Or are we going to save ourselves? Are we going to continue to have the crutches that we've always seen as security? Our governments, them deciding all the laws, everything. We're just like, can you do it for us? Are we going to continue to allow that, to stay children, to stay dependent, just like we do in religion? There's a dependency. There's also a dependency on the political governments that we construct as well. And so these planets are speaking the language that the political structure, your institutions that have held you up and always been there, they're going to crumble. And what are you going to do as the 99%? Are you going to rebuild it? Are you going to allow those in authority to rebuild it for you? And do you trust them? Do you
Mm.
trust them? Yeah.
That's the hard question. Now, when you talk about money, is that cryptocurrency? Is that something that is coming in to change things, or is that something that was just in that system too and will be demolished also? Or do you know?
Yeah, so that's our money, the way we use and handle our money, it's going through renovation. And we can see that, like you said, with crypto, we can see that with the possibility of no longer having physical money, but everything computerized. There are certain parts of Europe where they don't use money anymore. You can't bring money into a store and they won't take it from you. And
Wow.
so yeah. And so behind our backs, those that we gave authority to empower, they're creating the systems for us. I lived in Europe. I lived in Egypt, then I lived in Spain, and then I lived in France. And I also visited Italy and spent a lot of time there. And a lot of our friends who are from there, they were telling us about when the euro came in. Because when we moved abroad, the euro was $1.35 to our dollar. So it was 35 cents more. So every $100 that we had, we were losing $35 on it. So it was a bad time for us to move. So we were just like, Dad, we're getting killed here trying to change our money, you know? But so that the euro was really on our mind. We're just like, wow, like how did this euro come to be? And could you tell us the story? So our friends told us how one day they had the lira, like my twin sister's name, and they had the franc, so or whatever those other bills are from different countries had their own currency. And then one day, in the blink of an eye, out of the darkness, their leaders that they elected told them your money's gone. You're going to use euros now. And so, yeah, no, just threw it on them. And so the old system's gone. So what are you going to use if there's one that has been put in? You have no choice but to use it. And all of them, my friends, they lost 33% of their life savings because of that change.
Wow. Oh
Can you
man.
imagine? And guess what, Adam? They had to sit there and fold their hands and allow the strings to move. You see how horrible, right?
That is
And
horrible.
we also have friends in Cyprus, the Cypriots, and my sister lived there, and we spent time there with them. And the Cypriots have farmlands. A lot of them, the way that they create generational wealth, not that they're wealthy, but having a home to live in and not having to pay rent and mortgage, that's wealthy, right?
Hmm.
So that's how they end up being able to survive in life, is because they've inherited the same home, the same land and property for hundreds of years from their ancestors. So it keeps moving forward. In France, you can't disinherit your children. So if you have a home or whatever, it's left to your children. So this is how Europe has been able to make sure that each generation has stabilization and security. Now it's being taken away. So in Cyprus, our friends who've had their homes and their farms for hundreds of years, the government comes in and says, you're not paying, you haven't paid taxes in like 40 years. Why aren't you guys paying taxes? You know, we demand the taxes on your property. And so these Cypriots are farmers. They're not making a lot of money. They've been living off the land of the home that they inherited. And so now they're told that they have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes for land that they inherited from their family. And
Oh,
so
that's
guess,
terrible.
yeah, horrible. And so people that we know, right? And so guess what? They're poor. They can't pay it. So guess what the government does? Comes in and snatches up their land, their homes. And now we have people living in apartments now, right? And they're foreigners. A lot of Chinese bought those properties. They're living on their lands and their houses now. And what did the people do? What could they do? Right? They have no power because they gave it all away, right? And so
Yeah.
that comes to the point that we are here now in as humanity, as a 99%. Do we trust people that we don't even know? We've never broken bread with them. We don't know what kind of character they are. We've seen the demonstration of what politics do, how they lie, they cheat, they steal. Not all of them. Some of them start off good, they turn out bad. They're all rich now. They started off poor. They're all rich now. We see the evidence of the characters, and yet we surrender our power and say, could you do that for us? I'm busy over here. You know, oh, that medicine's good for us. Okay, well, no side. Okay, we'll do it. You know, it's just like we trust them. And so we've had enough evidence to show that we need to be on duty. You know, we let our guard down. And so what kind of world do we want to see for our children? We are the only ones that can participate and make that world. And if we don't participate, then they're going to live in a world where the planets are speaking of the possibility of 1984. But it also gives the evidence that if we wake up collectively and we say no, that is always also a power or an energy down to software into the program that could change the way it'll manifest on the earth. And so this is why astrology helps us to see how there's a participation that can create better lives for you and for us. But if we're ignorant to those mechanisms, then we are simply hostages of it.
What does that scenario look like when people do wake up? And what does that look like on a day-to-day, person-to-person level?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And that is the that's the key to immortality. I mean, that is like the fountain of youth. Because we're so individualized, unfortunately, you know. I believe in the short answer, there's a longer answer, right? Explanation that we both can give. But humans are part of the way that the hierarchy is able to maintain their rule and our dependency and our ignorance is that we continue to be separated from one another. And we also are in this rat race, this hamster wheel of struggle. Struggle is one of the largest ways to keep people captive, because everyone of the 99% has to feed their family. They cannot stop working. None of us can stop working, right? 99%, we cannot stop working. And so we have to be out there struggling, busy, hours and hours of work, not being able to concentrate on any of the things that are going to build our minds, build our talents, help us to graduate to the next level so that we can become independent and self-dependent, because we're struggling out there to feed our families, to keep a roof over our head. And so that is the biggest asset that they have, is that we don't have a moment to even concentrate. And if we had a moment to concentrate, we would be able to unravel the program of what they are doing to us. And so, do I see that as an impossibility that we could somehow come together and fix this? I feel that from my heart feels that I want it to happen. I want people to rescue ourselves. I want people to love one another and look at another person like that's you. Like, I see children and that's my child. Like, I want the best for every child. I will love another child. I love another child. I love another human being. And because we all think that our struggle is more than another person's, or that our struggles are being invalidated, it takes away the ability of us to see the humanity in someone else. And so, lacking in that vision of the humanity of the whole human family makes us makes people have no empathy for anyone else but themselves and their family. And it's not because they're cruel people. It's because they're trying to keep their own heads above water, that they don't have time to see the suffering of others, and a time to see the possibility that maybe they should fight for someone else too, besides themselves. And so hopefully there comes a point where people graduate from religion to spirituality, and then the collective building of those individuals will help us to overcome what is being done to us without our realization.
I love it. I love it. That was a good short. You summed that up really quick. I was thinking this could take like an hour, hour and a half to explain, and it could. It could. You could go into detail, but that was good. That was a good summation of it, and I'm in agreement. How could I not? It's like that.
There are soul groups, you know. It's like I feel like you. Even when I saw you come on, I was like, I felt akin to you. I didn't feel nervous or anything, like, you know.
I felt the same way. Same way. Like, that's my
Yeah.
sister, you know that.
Right? That's how I feel.
That's awesome. Well, again, I want to thank you from my heart for speaking, and I got so much out of it, and I definitely want to do a part 2. So hopefully we can figure that out. And I just want to wish you a blessed night, and we'll talk again.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much. Namaste to you.
Thank you, Vera.
Not in a religious way, but I see the good in you. So thank you
you
so much, Adam. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.